So, welcome everybody. We're super excited to have Janet on our show today. She is the author of Bliss Beyond the Buzz, and I'm going to read her bio here in a minute. But we're so excited to have her here today. Number one, because she's just an amazing human. I think you'll learn that very quickly. But second, because we're going to be talking about a topic that I don't think is talked about enough, and that is using substances to cope with trauma, with abuse. I came across a statistic the other day that women who have experienced domestic violence are 3 times as likely to develop a substance use addiction. So, for our audience, for Heather and I feel like this is such a relevant topic because these relationships leave us, and even while we're in the relationship, they leave us with so much trauma, with a disrupted nervous system, and it's not uncommon. Obviously, given that statistic shows that it's not uncommon for us to turn towards substances to soothe ourselves, to numb ourselves from the pain that we're experiencing. So I think this topic is just so important for people to hear more about. And I think your journey is really inspiring. And you've even made a huge pivot in your career to strictly focus on helping people live a sober lifestyle. So I'm really excited to have you here today.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just read a little bit about you so our guests can get to know you a little bit better. So Janet Fugate is the founder and author of Bliss Beyond the Buzz. She's a registered nurse and certified coach with years of healthcare leadership experience, mentoring, coaching, and developing cohesive teams. Janet is passionate about empowering others to live healthier and happier lives. She's been alcohol-free for over 3.5 years, and maybe that's longer, I'm not sure.
6 years.
6 years now, wow. Fell in love with exercise, adopted clean eating, lost over 50 pounds, and completely changed her life. In her own words, if I can do it, you can too.
That's
so
right.
That is Janet. I wanted to start our discussion here with a quote from your book that really drew me in. It was within the first couple pages. So in your book, you say, "How much had I drunk? How could I let this happen? Me, Janet, the responsible one, the educated, successful healthcare executive, the level-headed, always does the right thing, money-saving, God-fearing woman who had been dutifully doing what she was supposed to since she was 21 years old. Now here I was, alone, drunk on the bathroom floor." Quite powerful, and that resonated a lot with me. So I'm wondering if we can just start there. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to that moment in your life?
Yeah, that's a really dark time. So I had just managed to leave my abusive ex-husband, and it was it was a violent. Wasn't always violent, but there was a lot of emotional abuse, and there was always a threat of violence, and then there was violence. So when I finally got the nerve or strength or whatever happened to me to get out of there, I was in an apartment by myself. And I mean, my whole life had been upside down. I had been married almost 25 years. I had been in this relationship with this man, since I was 19. So I kind of it was like the frog in the pot. I got in there, and then it got hotter and hotter, and I didn't know how to get out, and just kept trying to make things better. But we all know how that you can't change someone else. So anyway, when I left the relationship, it was like, obviously trauma, all the PSTD, all the uncertainty, all the thoughts of failure. What have I done? Why couldn't I make my marriage? All the things that I processed. And alcohol was like such a godsend, basically. Hey, I can have some wine. I can be in. And I really felt this sense of freedom, because I moved from my parents' house to my husband's house, and now here I was by myself. I had my own first apartment, here I am in my 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I can drink as much as I want. I can do whatever I want. Let's get. And anyway, that particular night, it was very vivid still in my mind. that I had been out with some friends and had too much to drink, came home, continued drinking, and then got sick, obviously. And I was laying on the floor thinking to myself, those thoughts. How can this happen? What if I die here? What if my poor daughter finds me in this condition? No. So yeah, that was how I got there. It wasn't that I always had that experience every time, but it was just the accumulation of the stress and that getting away. That's always the most dangerous time, and he was actively going through the restraining order. We were in court. I mean, it was just I was in a new place and still had my full-time job. I mean, I know a lot of you can probably relate if you've had that experience. It's
Totally.
terrible time, and your
Yeah.
alcohol was very comforting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the purpose of these episodes is to make people feel less alone. And I think we all three can say we have used substances to cope through these really, really challenging times. Yep. So I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that and that part of your story. And if anybody wants to hear more about your story, again, they can pick up your book. You do give quite a bit of detail and background of kind of what led you there, but we really want to focus on what happened after that. So tell me about the years following that, that situation as it relates to your own growth and healing journey and this journey towards sobriety.
Yeah. So I feel like I want to say at this point as well, that our society is filled with addictions and substance, and we all, it's normalized, and it is normal for us to turn to these things, whether it's antidepressants or barbiturates or alcohol or shopping or sex or food or whatever it is. So yeah, we're created in that, and yet there's this terrible stigma around alcohol, and the fact that if you're drinking more than you want, that you're an alcoholic, and that they put these labels on you. And so a lot of people don't want to address it because they don't relate with that. I'm not the guy on the park bench with the brown plastic bag, but I'm here to say that if you're drinking more than you want, you probably have a problem. And I think we don't want to admit it because most of us, especially us women who have tried to hold our families together, who have coped beyond measure, that we are highly functioning. We go to work every day. We'd never miss a payment. We never get a DUI, but we are drinking way more than we should. And so those are the people that it was me. It's been one of you. It's those listeners. I really just want to say, listen, you can stop, you can get help, you can, and it doesn't mean you have to go to rehab. You don't have to be an alcoholic to quit drinking. You can just make the decision that you want to be healthier and that you want to make a change.
Absolutely. Yeah. And find healthier ways to cope.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of women coming out of these relationships struggle with that exact thing. I know I did. And I think that's part of, that's part of it, is admitting, I think I may have a problem and I need to stop. And for me, it was, I'm tired. I think I got up to maybe a bottle of wine, like an entire bottle of wine to myself. And I could drink more than that, but a bottle of wine was an easy for me. And at some point I decided I do not like the way that I feel. Waking up in the morning to get my kids off to school, it's, I was always irritated. I was anxious. I was in a hurry because I would sleep to the last minute. And then my poor kids, I'm getting them out of bed and rushing them to get to school on time. And it's because I just did not feel good. So I love that you're including that in your story. You don't have to be an alcoholic to have a drinking problem and decide that you want to stop.
Yeah. And, I think this episode is so timely with the Surgeon General just basically saying that they're going to have to put stronger warnings on alcohol because contrary to popular belief with the whole 3 drinks a week or 4 drinks a week, everything's safe, no amount of alcohol is safe for consumption. I mean, that's what the new studies are showing. And so our culture is going to have to catch up with us because we promote it in everything. I mean, how many baby showers have you been to and been served mimosas or
sangria?
Sangria. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
So, I think while the mommy juice and all the other things, it's really something we're going to have to admit that we're not doing ourselves any favor. And I think sometimes our self-esteems are low, that we are, the last thing we want to do is take care of ourselves. We just want to hide, run away, cry, whatever it is. But one of the best things you can do for yourself is actually get rid of those things that are, like you said, Heather, keeping you feeling bad. We spend so much money in America on youth and healthy and how to get energy and all this. And if I could tell you, guess what? You can quit this substance, feel better, look better, have less cancer risks, and save money. I mean, who wouldn't do that?
Right. Exactly. It feels like a no-brainer, right?
It does,
but
it's
it
not.
Can be more challenging than we think, which is, why I think it's so great that we have you on to share some tips and resources and things, which we'll get into a little bit later. But you just said something there that was, I think you said, we turn to things that keep us feeling yucky. So I think that takes us into this next question, which Heather, do you want to ask a little bit about that one?
Yeah. So you refer to alcohol as your second lover or a second abusive lover in your book. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah. So after I left and was trying to figure my way out, I was basically trying to figure out who I was. I mean, let's face it, I grew up with him and all the negative things that I heard and felt and experienced. And what do I like? I knew what he liked and I knew what he expected. And I had all those parameters. But as I started that self-discovery, I decided that I really like to drink. And I became like the great spokesperson for alcohol. I was one of those people who had the t-shirts and every gift was a fancy wine glass or you had me at Merlot or I had 5 o'clock somewhere signs and all the paraphernalia. I was the great spokesman. And it really seemed that it made me happy. It was the life of the party. I had so much fun with alcohol that I thought, man, this is great. I love this alcohol stuff, And then what I didn't realize was that the more I drank and, became accustomed to it, the more it expected of me. I mean, the more I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with heart palpitations, the more dehydrated I was, the more the vicious loop of never feeling completely good and abandoning all my fitness goals that I had. Who wants to have a couple glasses of wine and then bust it out in the gym and prep a healthy meal? I mean, it's order a pizza, right? Come on, we're not.
Exactly.
So it's not just the alcohol that ruins the lifestyle. It's all the decisions you make because of it. You don't sleep as well. You don't eat as well. You don't exercise. I mean, there's just, it's a vicious spiral. So I think, for me, I started realizing that it was not good for me. And I say my catalyst was my granddaughter. And when she was born and 8 months old, they moved to my town and I would start watching her at night and, watching her sometimes. And she spent the night with me. And I just remember, I wouldn't drink until she went to bed. And it was like, okay, she's in bed, and then it was like, well, on my third glass of wine, wait a minute. What if she wakes up? What if something's wrong? What if she needs to go to the doctor? How am I going to drive her? And that was when I started trying to address my second abusive lover. Like, okay, I'm seeing you too much. We're going to have to cut back, just like with those controlling abusive lovers. He was like, oh, hell no, you're mine, And so every time I tried to cut back, it was like, it became more of an obsession. It was like the harder I tried to moderate, the more it became, oh my gosh, I really want that. Can I have another one? And it became so much work, so hard. Okay, Janet, this week you're only going to have 2 glasses of wine. That's it, period. boy, I mean, it's like the more you tell yourself you can't have something, the more you want it, right?
Right.
And so it wasn't until I made the decision to cut back that I realized how invasive this relationship with alcohol was. And so that's when I started on my journey to try to moderate. And then when that didn't happen, okay, what do I need to do to get a hold of myself? I need to quit. And that's when I joined the 1 year no beer for 28 days. I white knuckled through that and then thought, okay, I'm good. I'm not alcoholic. I'm great. I can keep drinking, and went right back. Then I decided I needed a little bit longer. So I did the 90-day challenge. And, after 90 days, I knew I still want this. It really was like an abusive lover. It was my comfort. It was my,
Right.
and it was part of my identity. The other thing is the social aspect of it. Oh my goodness. Now I'm not married. So what do people want to do? They want to go get drinks. Everybody wants to go to the party. And I had built myself quite a social, network, if you will. All my friends drank. We all drank together. So when I quit, it was like, whew, man, this is crazy. So yeah, it was a big, big transition. Now, if you'd have told me when I quit, when I decided to take that break, that I would never drink again, I would have said, no way. I love alcohol. I'm just doing this to get, reduce my tolerance.
Reset. Yeah.
Good. I'm going, but man, after about 172 days, and I know that sounds like a lot of days, but for me, that was my magic day. And that was the day that I realized, guess what? I feel so much better. I'm sleeping good. Look, my face is not as puffy. I have more energy. And you know what? I'm not jealous that my new husband who has the cocktail across the hot tub from me is drinking. I feel happy drinking my water. So there was a period where I had a mind shift, I call it. And it happens at different times for different people. Everybody's journey with alcohol is different, So anyway, that was kind of mine. And I was so thankful when I finally got rid of that second abusive lover. I'm not getting a third. There's no more for me.
Heck no. Done with that. No,
Done.
thank you for sharing that. And we wanted to point out that statement specifically, just the second abusive lover and that tie-in, because you mentioned being caught in a vicious cycle, and it is very much like the cycle of abuse. We get out of these relationships and not realizing we've become comfortable in the uncomfortable, and we will unconsciously do what we need to do to keep ourselves there. And substances can be that thing that keeps us in that cycle of feeling those high highs when we're drinking or smoking weed or whatever it is we're doing, or consuming the foods. But then we have those low lows, the next day when you're feeling terrible physically, you're regretting what you've done, you're wondering how the heck did I end up here? So just wanted to call that out, that again, that's another very common thing, to almost put ourselves into our own cycle of abuse with something once we get out of the relationships, to keep that comfortable feeling inside of our bodies. So
it's a dopamine. It's a means to produce dopamine. And that, I think that for me anyway, whenever I was, going through my healing journey, and I sat down and started kind of reevaluating my life, and writing my book, one of the light bulb moments for me was I didn't have a person that was giving me this dopamine, oxytocin anymore. And I think it helped settle my nerves, but two, it gave me that boost, that quick hit of happiness. But it was just for a brief period of time. So, I mean, it is essentially the same cycle.
Right. Totally.
And I think it's really I think we need more education about alcohol itself. I'm an alcohol-free coach as well, and one of the things that we learn is we have all these myths built up about alcohol, that it relaxes us, that it helps us sleep, that it does, does all these things for us. But if we really look into what those chemicals do to our body, you're right. You do get a hit and you do feel high and you do feel good for a minute.
Yeah.
But when those, at the minute, I think it's an hour and however many minutes before your body starts detoxing, those chemicals go and they have to push other chemicals to get your brain back into balance. I mean, all the things, and anxiety, that's the big one for me. It was like, I thought that it really did help my anxiety, but the truth is it causes anxiety. And as you go through that cycle, anxiety, you can call it whatever you want,
Yeah.
but it's real. And that's why it does so much damage, rather than it gets to the point where you can't handle the stress even when you're not drinking. So it lowers your anxiety tolerance and your stress tolerance.
Yeah.
So, I think that if we knew that, or if we believed it, or if we, instead of, I think we just, it's a pretty package, and we think it does so many wonderful things for us.
Right.
But it doesn't.
No. And it really prevents us from getting on the healing journey we need to get on to after these relationships. It prevents us from feeling the uncomfortable emotions that none of us want to feel, but that we need to feel in order to heal. So just another thing to be thinking about. But so for someone who this is resonating with, and they're like, okay, I want to start my sober journey. In your book, you give the 10 tips for starting a sober journey, but can you just highlight maybe, I don't know, what are your top things that you would recommend? Maybe 3 to 5 things for that person who's listening and wants to get started on their own sober journey.
Yeah, well, there are so many things now. We're really lucky in this day and age that there are so many people who are actually getting off alcohol, and there's all kinds of groups, support groups. I say, obviously I'm a alcohol-free coach. If you had someone one-on-one, depends on what you're looking for, what you need. There's local groups and all kinds of things. But I say, number one, make the commitment. Just make the commitment not to drink. And that can be the biggest decision. We all say that, right? Your first step is awareness. Then you got to make the decision. You've got to want to quit. But sometimes a challenge is a good way to do it. Like, having a 28-day challenge or whatever. Take a break. Mm-hmm. If you could just take, 28 days, 30 days, if you could just take that break, and I don't care if you eat 12 bonbons a day. I don't care if you eat 12, a bunch of donuts or whatever you have to do to just not drink for that period of time. And you start replacing it with healthy habits. You start getting friends that don't drink. There's so many things to support that. But at the end of the 30 days, if you're not sleeping better, if you're not feeling better, if all those things are not improving, go back to drinking. But I tell you, if you really give it a good shot, you will see that it does actually make you feel better. So I have specific examples, like you said, in my book, and there's a lot of support. You can Google it. You can look on my website or on my Facebook page. I've got always, every day almost, putting things out there. Try this, don't do this, do that. One of my funny tips is just to brush your teeth. I mean, how good does that wine taste after you've had your crest in your mouth, right?
Not so great. Not so great at all. Yeah. No, I love that. I love the idea of just starting small, because I think the idea for some people, and I like the occasional glass of wine. So for me to think I'm going to completely throw this by the wayside feels a little daunting, but for someone just to say, okay, 30 days, 28 days, whatever it might be, just start small and see how you feel.
Right.
I think that's great.
Yeah. And, I think too, the other thing that we tend to do, being all or nothing people, we tend to, throw out the baby with the bathwater. So it's like, okay, I'm going to not drink for 28 days. And then on day 7, we have a glass of wine, or we, are at a party and have some champagne, whatever. May as well just drink. But, no, go ahead and look at over the 28 days. Maybe you did have two glasses of wine, but still you had 26 days when you didn't drink, so celebrate those things and keep going.
Definitely. Yes. All right. Thank you for sharing those tips. That's great. Do we want to talk a little bit about just imposter syndrome a little bit? Heather, you want to?
Yes, sorry. So how did you overcome imposter syndrome and the voices inside your head telling you that you weren't good enough, smart enough, etc.? And, how did you conquer those voices and decide I am going to write this book and I am going to make a shift in my career and I'm going to, make differences in everyone's lives because everyone needs to know this.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, that is the toughest part, isn't it? I mean, let's face it. We can make the physical decisions. We can make the hard cuts. We can do the things we need to do, but we walk away with the scars. We walk away with the tapes playing in our head and with our low self-esteem, and we walk away with that baggage. And at some point we have to address that. And for me, that negative self-talk of, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough. It's interesting if you think about it. I probably had that already. And then when I got with him, he said the things that my brain, he said it out loud, what my negative inside voice was saying. So, wow, it just solidified it, right? It made it even harder. So I had to work really hard. And I'm talking therapy. I'm talking about reading every book you can get your hands on, Codependent No More, Women Who Love Too Much. Heather's book is great. There's so many resources, but you have to work hard to stop the voice. And for me, it was, finally addressing that. And it took getting alcohol out of the way before I could actually get down to it and say, okay, why am I telling myself these things? No one else in the world thinks that. My husband, I say, I'm the Janet hating club, we called it. And he said, well, you are the only member. There's no other members.
Oh, that's sweet.
I love that.
Yeah. Right.
But why do we do that to ourselves? I mean, we wouldn't talk like that to a friend. You wouldn't, so
right.
I think for me, and there actually are some really good, I've got a little course that I do, and I do it a lot with my one-on-one coaching for people who are struggling with that, on how to reframe the negativity in your head and put it into the positive. Just for an example, let's say something, maybe you did something bad, maybe you did something you shouldn't have done. And then immediately, what do we say? Oh, I'm so bad. Okay. Well, that act that you did or whatever you did might have been bad, but you're not bad. So reframe that. Don't take it all and, make it all about you. Yep, that's what happened. I'll do better next time, blah, blah, blah. So there's lots of ways to reframe. So for me, it took a lot of that work. And then I remember, as far as the book goes, it was like I had it mostly written and sitting there, and I just thought, who am I? Nobody's going to read this book. People are going to be like, oh, I'm not a writer. I'm not professional. What is my story? And it was Brene Brown, and she was on a podcast, and I was listening to it, and she said, some of you have stories on your shelves right now that other people need to hear, that you are depriving the world from. And I'm like, is she talking to me?
Yeah.
So,
yes, she was.
Yeah, I guess so. So anyway,
that was. I had $1 for every time I met with somebody and they said, I have a story. I would love to write a book. Yeah. I'd be rich.
Me too.
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And so the thought is there for everyone. And I love Brene Brown, by the way. She was actually the book that helped me become more aware was The Gift of Imperfections. So anyone who's listening, any Brene Brown books are amazing. But that one was a very short read and down to the point. And it helped me become more and more aware of where I was people pleasing and where the imposter syndrome came. So sorry, Janet, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, that's so true. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Good. Well, I wanted to kind of just go back to the origins here as we wrap up. And Heather and I, we work with a lot of women who are still in their abusive relationship. We have a lot of women within our Rise and Thrive Facebook group that are still in that relationship. So I kind of wanted to go back to the origins of your story. And what piece of advice would you give to that woman who is struggling to leave now that you're where you are today?
Yeah, It's really tough. Just even thinking, and my heart goes out to anyone, any of you who are still in that type of relationship. Of course, the pat answer would be, get out, you deserve better, those kind of things. But I would say that some of the things that would be the best is start looking for things that you can do for yourself, even if you haven't left or are not in the position to leave, like getting rid of alcohol, like doing some of these things that you self-defeating behaviors, get those out even while you're there. And let the real you, let the start to believe in yourself and know that you do deserve better. Because I think when we stay in these things, it makes it harder for us to leave, because we feel maybe that we deserve what we're getting, or that, oh, well, this is the best I can do, whatever those negative things are. So take, do something good for yourself, try to take care of yourself, and get those, especially those substance abuses and things, out of your way if you can, even while you're there.
For sure. No, thank you for sharing that. That's great. Good. So you've mentioned that you do help coach people on their own sober journeys. Can you talk a little bit about how people can find you and find your services?
Yeah, I say, if you can remember Bliss Beyond the Buzz, then you can find me. Bliss Beyond the Buzz is my Facebook page, my Instagram, my website, all those things. And then my book, Finding Bliss Beyond the Buzz. If you typed in Bliss Beyond the Buzz, it would come up. So if you think of Bliss Beyond the Buzz, oh, here, me too. Okay.
So good. Go buy it. It's such a great read.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan. That means a lot.
No, I loved it. It was great. So yes, and I have linked, if you're watching on YouTube, the link to her website is in the show notes. So you can find that and find her resources and a way to get in touch with her for coaching if you'd like. So great. Anything else from you guys before we sign off for today? Or were there any questions that came in, Heather, while we were chatting?
No, I don't think. Let me make sure. Nope, no questions. But I did want to just say thank you, Janet, for coming on today and sharing your story. Our hope is that the more women that we interview and the more women we interview and talk through how they were able to turn these negative experiences into a life they love to live, we hope to inspire them to start making those choices for themselves, even if you're still in the relationship. So,
well, thank you guys for what you do. Really appreciate that. That's awesome.
Thank you for what you do.
Thanks for having me. That was great. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us. And one other little note for listeners, I've mentioned a couple times, Heather and I have mentioned in this episode, we run our private Facebook group as well, Rise and Thrive Women. I have the link to that in the show notes as well. Janet's part of our group. So yes, come join us, come hang out with us over on Facebook. We provide a monthly support group the last Saturday of each month that's online via Zoom. So another way to get some support there. So
for domestic abuse, just to be clear.
Yeah, Rise and Thrive, journeying from surviving to thriving after abuse is the name. So
all right. Well, thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
All right. Bye.